This situation to me is quite honestly confusing, and I'm not quite sure what the genesis of it is, and I'm not quite sure why it's continually being pushed in the media.
In a nutshell, it sounds as if there are questions about whether the university receives value for the amount of money spent on trips overseas. There have also been questions raised about a fundraising trip you took to San Francisco. Do you see something else at work here?
Well, there may be something else, because those kinds of things are out in the media, and you have every right to repeat it, but they weren't written correctly. There's never been an auditor's report. There was an accounting firm that did a review of travel policy, and it was subjective and was criticized by our own legal counsel as unprofessional. I've taken one trip 5.5 years ago, a short trip, 10 days to Asia with 10 colleagues, the president of our foundation. No tax dollars were involved. It was an opportunity to see Tom Friedman's flat world and to be able to start enthusiasm among the faculty for what they said was their number one priority, globalization. For me, it has to be something else, because the reality is I self-reported a mistake that I unintentionally made several years ago. And that mistake was to assume the practice that I inherited was policy, and it turned out to not be the case. My administrative vice president came in and said, look, I know you travel, and when you go to a hotel, you buy a Coca-Cola, you have a drink, you have some friends in that city or this city, and you buy them dinner, and then you come back and you redact it and you reimburse. But that's not the policy, so stop doing it. And I said, well, I have to do more than that. And you know, you grow up learning to tell the truth. And I self-reported it to the chairman of my board, self-reported to our legal counsel. Legal counsel came in, reviewed the documents, said there were no violations of the law. I still was concerned about it. Said, do I need to lose sleep over it? And he said, no. He said, just don't do it again. And I haven't done it again, but now, years later, anonymous documents come up, and the chairman of my board and the executive committee, with many violations of the open meeting law, and totally aside from the other 8 members of the board, went on this investigation that at the end of hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent, have come up with what? They've come up with the fact that I self-reported something years ago.
This afternoon, Governor Deval Patrick said that he thought you weren't taking the situation seriously enough.
Well, if I were a governor and having misinformation from my staff, I'd probably be upset with my staff. I know the governor said that in Pittsfield, where he lives, as you know, in a second home right next door in Richmond. So are
you suggesting this was a sort of off-the-cuff comment? Or?
I do. You know, I've known the governor for a long time. I have great deference to him. He certainly, when he began his life, he had very complicated charges against him, and he was given due process by the press and by others. And I've only asked for due process. But the reality is we're going to be on television this evening, and by now the Commissioner of Higher Education, as we said we would, will have received a 20-page document with reference to thousands of documents that explain in great detail every single thing that has been suggested that needed answers, and they are there clearly in black and white.
I was talking to someone up at the State House earlier today, and he suggested to me that the root of all this is a dispute between the chairman of the board of trustees, who is an official in the state police, and yourself, because you've been trying to crack down on standards for Massachusetts state police officers who are studying at Westfield.
I would hope that isn't the case. It's conceivable, I guess. We've had a number of state police being chairman over the last several years as members of our board, chairman of the board, finance chairman, vice chairman. You know, it seems somewhat unusual. I hope there's nothing wrong. The dispute seems to be an odd one, because when I've been evaluated over the last 3 years by the present chairman of the board for a pay increase as late as December of 2012, he said it was all about my fiscal management, my vision, and my experience, why he would recommend a pay increase. So honestly, I don't get it.
What strikes me is a sort of odd situation is the trip you took to San Francisco, where if the Globe report is any indication, your trip to San Francisco was billed to your trustees as a major effort to tap into big foundations out there. You know, there was no face-to-face lobbying to raise money.
Well, you know, that's just not entirely accurate, and I wish the reporters had talked to me, which they have not. That trip was about two things. It was about, one, after 4 years of finally being able to get an appointment with the Apple Corporation, which is everything in the Silicon Valley, and it was also to participate in what we call a J-term, January and June, where we take students with faculty and administrators on credit earning 3 hours of credit, trips around the world, to Ghana, to Dublin, to Vietnam, to China. 500 students have gone now with 60 different faculty members, and I was participating in the J-term. That was all it was. Okay. Now, I don't understand. I would have flown, as any college president would have flown. I don't care if you're the president of Harvard or MIT or Westfield State. If the Apple Corporation was going to give you an opportunity, I would have flown out to San Francisco for that alone.
Would you be willing to resign if you thought this was hurting the institution? At what point does the good you've done been compromised by this controversy?
You know, it would be like asking Governor Patrick after the first 3 weeks of his governorship if he was prepared to resign. It doesn't make any sense. This is a situation that has spiraled up out of control in many ways. My interest in the future is to continue what I've always done in public life. I always tell the truth. I'm always transparent, and I'm always prepared to answer questions. Beyond that, I look to stay at Westfield State in our 175th anniversary. Look forward to homecoming next weekend, and to continue to make a difference for my faculty and my students, who I'd like to think, if I have any legacy with them right now, it's raising the aspirations of the institution.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it.